Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are continuing on with our expression tool expedition. This is exciting. We're going to start diving into the expression designer, and this is going to be a long journey because the expression designer is fairly complex. So, looking forward to that. So, let's get started. Now, the way to get to the expression designer, there's several ways. The first way is whenever you double click an expression, you'll get the expression selection dialog box, and that expression you double clicked will be highlighted. From there, you can simply choose Edit, and you will pull up the expression designer. There's a few other ways to get there. If you hold down the Option key and double click, that will take you directly to the expression designer. If you hold down Option and press Return, that will also take you to the expression designer. Option Enter will also take you directly to the expression designer. And if you right click the expression and choose Edit Text Expression Definition right here about in the middle, again, that will take you directly to the expression designer. So a few different ways to get there. I'm going to go the old-fashioned way, double click and choose Edit. And here is the expression designer window. Now there's three parts to the expression designer, and there's three tabs on the top. There's the main part, the playback portion of it, and the positioning part of it. And right now we're going to concern ourselves with the main part of it. And in the main section here, there's actually sort of three areas to this. We have on the top, we have a description, and in this field we can type anything we want. And this description field is entirely informational, has no bearing on the expression itself. It won't show this text in the score. It won't have any effect on the playback. It's entirely secretarial, I suppose. And what it does is when you click OK, on the bottom left corner here in this window, you'll see when you have that expression selected, you'll see it'll tell you first technique text. That just tells you that it's in the techniques text category, and then it will display that information that you just typed there. Type anything we want. And if you choose the expressive text category, you'll see expressive text and then whatever description that particular expression has. And you can use this however you want. Sometimes you can use this to display playback information just so you can see it at a glance. But just be aware that as you go through this expression selection dialog box, you can choose different items, and you'll see that information get changed at the bottom. So you can use that to your advantage if you feel like you need to see something at a glance about that expression. You can use that description to do that. All right. The next part of this box is, I guess I should say there's two options for any expression. You can have a text expression or you can have a shape expression, right? So let's look at the text expression first. And there's a few parts of this section which takes up the majority of this expression designer main section. Essentially right here is the text field, so you can type anything you want. And these words will get put into the expression and into the score. Anything you want. You can even go on second lines here, more lines, etc. And so that typing, or those words, will get put into the score, as you can see there. And there's a lot of things we can do with this text. Now, below the text field here, we have a couple options here. We have Use Technique Text Category Fonts, which is usually checked by default. And below that, there's two options here for the font. There's the text font and the music font. So every category has a default set of fonts for both text and music. And if we go into the category designer, if I were to choose Edit Category, this is the category designer. Up in this section here, this is where those fonts are set. So we have a text font Times New Roman 12, and the music font is Maestro 24. And every single category will have a unique set of default fonts for text and music. If I go to expressive text, you'll see it's pretty much the same thing, except italics is chosen for the expressive text. So again, these settings here will determine the default text setup for these expressions in that category. So if I were to create a brand new technique text expression, you'll see that these it will be checked, and then you can choose one or the other. And interesting, you can go back and forth. So I'm in the text font right now. I can start typing the letter F, and you'll see lots of Fs. But if I switch over to the music font now, then I type F, and I'll get the forte marking. So you can go back and forth in this manner. type P, and get either music characters or texts. All right, and they can be mixed as much as you want, as much as you need, etc. The tricky thing to using the music font is that you do sort of have to know what letters or numbers to type in order to get those music characters. But I'll show you an easier way to do that in a few minutes. But that's how you would do that. Now, if we go back to this text expression here, if we uncheck this, what we can then do is individualize this particular expression with different fonts, different styles, different text sizes. There's a whole bunch of different things that we can do to these texts right here. And in fact, all you really need to do is just highlight something and choose bold, for example, and you'll see that that one word would get bold. Or italics, etc. We can change the size of it, change that to 24, and you'll see that particular word is a lot bigger. Incidentally, if you don't have it highlighted and you just go in and change the size, the next thing you type will be that size. So that's how that works. Also, if I were to go back and actually let me just cancel and go back and try this again. That you'll get those options if you uncheck, but we can also do this directly from the text menu in the top here. So if I again highlight the word expression and go to the text menu and change the style to bold, you can do that as well. And what it will do is it will uncheck this automatically for you. So now you get that mixed font situation again. All right. And in fact, you can just as an illustration, I did this in the score here. You can see that there's lots of different things you can do, mixing fonts and styles and all kinds of things. Here's the words can be are hidden. So what's interesting is that you can actually see it in the score, but the can be won't print. Those hidden texts are kind of handy if you have like an expression that's specifically there for playback, but you don't want it to print. Then you can use that hidden property right here. It's right here, hidden. You'll see it sort of get grayed out. One thing I want to mention about text size is that there is an option here for fixed size. Now, fixed size in Finale, Finale deals with texts in a unique way insofar as that the staffs themselves are scalable, as you may know. So the staffs can get larger or smaller. Generally speaking, the text, and particularly with text expressions, they're going to scale with the size of the staff, which is kind of what you want to do. Like, again, with, for a forte marking, for example, that's a text expression technically. So you wouldn't want that forte marking to stay one size as the staffs get larger and smaller. It would look kind of silly at extreme sizes. So generally speaking, all text in Finale are not fixed, but you can on occasion fix the text font size. And in fact, I've done that here just to illustrate the difference. We have this non-fixed 18-point font in this first measure and a fixed 18-point font in the second measure. And you can see that the fixed 18 is a lot larger, and the reason for that is because the staff size itself is technically set to 63%. Now, 100% is sort of an arbitrary number that Finale picked. If you set your staffs to 100%, it will be a certain size, and that's just what it is. But as you can see, the fixed 18-point size is going to be that standard 18-point size that you get in any program. And again, it would be 18-point regardless of what it's attached to. So in this case, you can see that the fixed 18 is larger. In fact, if I were to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and change the size of the entire page, which would also affect fixed or not fixed text, and I'm just going to change this to 50%, and you'll see all of the expressions get a lot smaller except for that fixed 18-point font text right there. You see it's exactly the same size. So again, occasionally there's a usage for fixed point font sizes, but more often than not, you're going to want to have non-fixed texts. Now let me go back to our original text expression here. Go back to that expression designer. Show you a couple more things. So in addition to the options that are readily available here, including the font, the size, and the styles, there's some other options that are available that are directly accessible through the text menu here. Below this section of style, we have options for baseline shift, tracking, and superscript. Now, baseline shift is going to do is it's going to move upwards or downwards the word that you have selected. In this case, I have the word expression selected, and if I choose a number, these numbers should be pretty small. So if I choose 0.05 here, you'll see the word expression will get a little bit higher. Negative 0.05, incidentally, would go downwards. Set that back to 0. There's also superscript. So if I put a number there and choose superscript, the values are going to be fairly similar. So again, 0.05 would get it just that 2 just a little bit higher. And then finally, tracking. If you're familiar with how tracking works with fonts, you can select the whole thing here. And these tracking numbers have to be a little bit larger. I'd say anywhere between 100 to 800 or something, and also negative numbers if you want. The tracking has to do with how far the letters are from each other horizontally. So if I put in a number here like 300, you'll see that the text expression will get sort of spread out. So that's what the tracking does. And again, it can be negative, but I wouldn't go much lower than negative 100 because that's going to really scrunch them together. And in my score, I set up a bunch of things just to sort of show you the results of some of these things and some of the numbers that will result in those. And you can see the baseline shift here of 0.05, that the word shift and the number is a 0.05 shift. Here's a negative shift. The baseline shift can also be applied if you have multiple lines here. So in this case, I have this expression with a return to create the word shift 0.05 on the second line, and I've selected the whole thing and created a baseline shift of 0.05. And the result is that the words will actually get closer together, or the lines will get closer together. And if you use a negative baseline shift, the opposite will happen. Here's the results of some of the tracking. Now this is a 0 tracking. Here's 200, here's 500. You can see how far it gets separated. And again, here's negative 100, which gets a little bit scrunched. You don't really necessarily want to go much lower than negative 100. And again, with superscript, the numbers are similar. You can see the 5 get a little larger. And interestingly, you can combine baseline shift and superscript if you want and get something that looks like that. So that's how the baseline shift and the superscript work. And incidentally, in addition to being able to do that from the text menu here, if you have this unchecked, there is a button here for character settings. Now, when you select this, what this does, it pulls up a dialog box that gives you basically all the options. The fonts on the left-hand side, we can choose the typeface, the style, the size, whether or not it's fixed, and then we have options for baseline shift, superscript, and tracking that we can put in all at once under that character settings button. All right, so that's what that does. Now, in that text menu, it doesn't exist anywhere in the expression designer here, but in the text menu here, we have another thing that's available to us called inserts. And this is where we're going to very easily put in things like sharps, flats, naturals, double sharps, double flats, first of all. That's sort of going to be maybe the main reason to use the inserts. And this will allow us to put a sharp character from the Maestro text font, or from the Maestro music font in this case, directly in line with the text without actually having to go and change the font. So if I were to enter sharp here, it's kind of hard to see, but there is it entered a sharp after the word expression. Again, you can do that with the other accidentals as well. Below this first section, we have a whole bunch of different other options, including values that sort of come from different places in the file. So total pages will, as you would think, it would insert the number of total pages. And as the total pages changes, the number in the expression would change as well, because it's a token in that regard. Same thing with title, subtitle, all this stuff recalls from the score manager section. The copyright symbol will just insert a copyright symbol for you, because sometimes that's hard to find typing the copyright text. All this stuff is information that comes from the file, including the file name, the date, time, etc. And then finally, symbol. Let me show you what this is. So let me just actually create a new one. And I'm going to choose the music font. The thing about using a music font expression here is that it's really difficult to unless you have them all memorized, which would be silly, to know exactly what to type in order to get the music font. So Finale provides us this insert symbol. And when we do that, it will pull up the symbol selection dialog box. Now, this is every single character that exists in the font that you're currently using. In this case, I've selected the music font Maestro 24 Plain. So now it's giving me every character that exists in the Maestro font, so I can choose anything I want. Just select the one-bar repeat. And incidentally, on the bottom left-hand corner here, we'll see what is that you would have had to type in order to get that. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not so obvious. So it's usually a good idea to use this symbol selection to pull up music characters. So select that, and now you can see that I've got that one bar repeat as an expression, just like that. All right, let me go back, edit this one. The other thing that's available in the inserts at the very bottom, we have value number, controller number, and pass number. Now these are other tokens. The value number and the controller number are tokens that refer to specific things from playback. In fact, if I go to playback, it doesn't, well, it does sort of matter sometimes which one of these playback types you have, but most of the playbacks will use a set to value number. So if I set the, actually let's set the key velocity to 87, for example. So the value number is 87, and I go back here, and I were to insert the value number, what you'll see is the number 87 there. And then I can go into here and actually change this to a different number, 95, and you'll see that the number itself will change because it's a token in that regard. All right. I guess it does have uses on occasion, but that's how that works. The controller number is a little bit different. That has to do with specifically, I believe, the controller playback function. Yeah, here it is. It will reference this number right here. All right. We'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the playback portion of the expression designer. And finally, the last one, the pass number. This has to do with repeats. You can actually set the expression assignment to only play back on the first or second or third pass. I think I discussed that in the last video. If you insert a pass number, it will tell you what the expression is set to do. So it's very flexible in this regard, but you kind of have to know that all of that stuff is there. All right, so that is the inserts. And finally, these options here at the bottom are sort of available, but they're not really. I think line spacing will work. Let's see. If I select all of this and choose a different line spacing, yeah, we can sort of make this a little bit larger, and you'll see that it'll do that. The other things, for example, the justification and the word wrap. Now, interestingly, word wrap is checked, but there's no way to actually wrap words in an expression. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by this in my score. So this expression here, this really long one, I typed without putting return characters in this text field, and you can see, it looks like it's wrapping because the text field itself is sort of limited in size, but there actually is no right boundary for an expression. So you can see that it just sort of keeps on going, and it would go on into infinity if I just kept typing. Now it looks like it's on the second page, but it actually won't print on the second page. It'll just sort of fall off the first page, and that will be the end of it. Again, technically, I believe it's because I know that there's no right-hand boundary to an expression. I kind of wish there was, because then we'd have a few more options available to us in the expression designer. Because what that means is that, first of all, it won't wrap words, but it also, you can't justify anything other than left. And the only way to justify left is to actually put in the returns in the right spot, and it will justify left by default. But you can't justify right because there's no right boundary. You can't justify center because there's no right boundary. Same with full and forced full. So again, it's not... I wish there was a way to create a right boundary for an expression, but that's not the way that it currently works. So unfortunately, you won't be able to wrap words, and you won't be able to justify anything other than left justify, and that's sort of just by default. So, all right, so I think I'm going to end it here. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to start looking at the what am I going to start looking at? The enclosures in the text part of the designer here, this here. There's a bunch of different options here, so I'll show you that in the next video. All right, so thanks for watching, and come back soon, and we'll continue on with the Expression Tool Expedition.